What is happening here? I mean, how significant a portion of the Republican Party is moving in this direction?
Well, I don't think it's a huge portion, but it's way too big and it's growing, and it's a huge concern. I mean, what was this, 5 years ago? It might be like somebody like Rand Paul that would say something, or Dana Rohrabacher. Now, there's a significant number of folks doing it, with Tucker Carlson talking about, how great Vladimir Putin is and how Ukraine is really actually part of Russia. I think it's a couple things. Number one, it could be some naivety on foreign policy, not in Tucker's case. I think it's an affection for authoritarianism. And I think Vladimir Putin has done a decent job of engaging in culture battles, in culture war. And he is seen as the person defending, in essence, the culture of the past. And so it's very frightening. And by the way, Ukraine is next, sure. Already 1/3 of the country of Georgia is occupied by Russia. Nobody's going to stop them from going into the rest of that. Then you have the Baltics, you have the Balkans that they're interfering in. This is a frightening moment. And any Republican that has affection for Vladimir Putin has no understanding of what our party stands for or our country stands for.
If you were wondering just how far off the cliff Republicans have gone, think about this. Right now, some of the biggest personas on the right are cheering on an impending Russian invasion of Ukraine, like this guy right here.
Wait a second. Why is it disloyal to side with Russia, but loyal to side with Ukraine? They're both foreign countries that don't care anything about the United States. Kind of strange.
Yeah, why is it disloyal to side with an autocracy, but loyal to side with a democracy? Anyone? Just so we're clear, if you're equating a democracy with a repressive authoritarian state that's meddled in our own democracy and recently hacked a permanent US resident journalist into pieces with a bone saw, then you might have lost the plot. And that really does give the game away in terms of where the right stands on the very notion of democracy. If they can't recognize why the US wouldn't support democracy over autocracy abroad, then it shouldn't be difficult to recognize that they don't support it here either. And the reason is simple. Republicans can't win on the merits. They can't win on a platform. Hell, they don't even have a platform. Their platform is whatever fleeting, errant thought falls out of Trump's face. And so instead, they've stopped pretending to stand for anything and have just opted to rig the rules of the game. And so still, to this day, the GOP and Donald Trump promote the big lie, all as a pretense to continue justifying their efforts to steal not only the last election, but the next ones too. And so they claim there was fraud, despite those claims being shot down in over 60 court cases, including at the hands of Trump-appointed judges, shot down by Trump's own DOJ, shot down by Trump's own DHS, shot down by Republican secretaries of state and Republican governors, and confirmed by every single recount and audit in every single quote-unquote disputed state. But none of that matters, because still Republicans pretend that something nefarious happened, and they point to the lie to validate using violence as a political tool. January 6th wasn't just an attempt to stop the certification of the last election, it was a blueprint for the next time. And if you don't believe me, then ask yourself why Trump has already announced that he'd pardon those who were involved. To him, they weren't acting illegally by breaking into the Capitol to kill the Vice President and the Speaker of the House. They were acting on his orders. The violence was the point. And despite the glaring obviousness of all of this, still virtually all of the Republican Party doesn't have the spine to speak up. The so-called Party of the Constitution, the people who love to crow about being the party of Abraham Lincoln, suddenly find themselves lining up behind authoritarians at home and abroad. Why? Because it's politically convenient. Russia clearly supports Trump and Republicans, and because they're too afraid not to, since they're guided more by their own desire to win a primary than to actually speak out for, oh, I don't know, democracy. Yeah, no, Lincoln would totally be proud. So good on Adam Kinzinger for being one of the only Republicans whose sole guiding principle isn't fear. Fear of Tucker, fear of Trump, fear of a primary. When the history books are written, he'll get credit for doing what so few of his colleagues were willing to do, and that's to actually bother putting country over party while they're crowing about just how patriotic they all are. To see more videos like this, click the subscribe button right here on this screen. And if you want to support my work, subscribe to my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. I cover the most important stories each week, and my guest is always one of the top political figures, including Vice President Kamala Harris, Jen Psaki, Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, Nancy Pelosi, Katie Porter, Cory Booker, and so many more. The podcast link is also right here on this screen, so give it a listen and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.